You're listening to TFM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. I'm here to talk to you about the creation of the MCU universe, and with me, as always, is John Mills.
Am I here, or is a 15-minute preamble slowly crawling across the screen explaining that I actually existed before the Infinity Stones? Here. I don't know.
I don't. Okay. I think it's you. I think it's
Okay.
you. I think it's me. I think we're both who we think we are, and we can talk about the Eternals.
Okay, listen, before
tonight.
we get into this, you just said I think we both are who we think we are. I think that the universe would actually benefit from an army of me, which is the one positive idea I think that we can come out of with this movie, is if there were millions of me, a few of you too, spread out across the universe, things would be pretty good. I think it'd be pretty nice.
Yeah, I can't agree with you. So
You can't. Come on now.
I'm just kidding.
Come
No,
on. It's just for beauty's sake alone.
Yeah, it's true. That's very true. Rarely has there been a more beautiful bald man. So 100% agree. So
It's just me and Sam Jackson ruling the universe. Two of us.
Man, that's totally understandable. Well, we are here with Assembling Avengers. We are talking about our next film in Phase 4, which is The Eternals, directed by Chloe Zhao. Before we get to talking about everything in the movie, just thank you for listening. We really appreciate you guys tuning in. And you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe. You'll get all the episodes here in the feed as soon as they drop. If you love the podcast, help us out by giving us a star rating review over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Really does make a difference. Of course, you can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Trek.fm and make sure all the podcasts here on the network keep coming to you each and every week. We've got the great new VIP room episodes that are dropping there that Christy and I are doing. So the only place to get those is on Patreon. You can also find us on social media at the 602 Club on Twitter and at 602 Club TFM on Instagram. So follow us, like us. Please enjoy the conversation over there. We'd love to get to converse with you. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM with the entire network. You can also find the entire network over at Trek.fm, where you can see all of the podcasts that we're doing. And there is a listeners-only discussion group on Facebook called the Babel Conference you can join. And you can talk to listeners from all over the world about our shows. John, I want to get this out of the way right up front.
Mm-hmm.
So, this movie, in many ways, basically creates a creation myth for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so I wanted to ask you, do you feel like that the MCU has what it takes to support this kind of theological depth?
No. Flat out, no. I mean, I hope that's not a controversial take at all. I don't think it should be. But no, I don't. The entire MCU prior to this was structured, and you and I can disagree about finer points and everything. I'll keep it very argument-free on this one, but it's structured as a very non-religious approach to everything. And it specifically does that with the Infinity Gems. It's sort of like, it's almost like string theory. It's a wonderful story to tell, and it removes all concept of, intellect or intent from the creation of anything. And okay, fine. It's a movie universe, and it keeps it, just going straight down straight down the aisle that way. Fine. nothing prior to this movie coming out supports any idea that, oh, by the way, before the stones existed, which we told you happened at the creation of the universe, Arishem happened. It's like, really? You're going to retcon everything now? That seems silly. And so I know I'm rambling at this point, but just to put the cap on it, another problem I have with it is just like the Loki series, making a joke out of the Infinity Stones. Oh yeah, we have plenty of those. We use them as paperweights. Well, you just devalued the whole driving thing that you told me to care so much about over the last decade. It's not good storytelling, man. You don't devalue the thing that was the big driving plot device of everything that came beforehand.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. I remember, seeing this movie for the first time and just being a little bit baffled that you would try to use this kind of depth in a universe that's already well established. And, I understand that comic book universes, DC and Marvel, both have their own creation type mythologies that they've built into them. But I think one of the reasons that this doesn't work specifically based off the MCU itself is that the MCU always felt like the heightened version of our reality and our world. It's like our world, but just slightly heightened, right? And I think that with that being the case, then adding this type of material, which creates an amount of depth and thought to it, just doesn't fit with the universe that they've created so far. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has never taken itself this seriously. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing. Now, if you had put this in the DC universe, it might make more sense, right? Because that series has already shown itself to take itself very seriously. But so much of the MCU is light and fun and enjoyable and airy, and nothing kind of has prepared us for, okay, now we're going to take ourselves so seriously that we are actually going to talk about the actual creation of this universe as if it was its own true world where we have a creation myth.
Now, see, you mentioned the DC thing, and of course there is, Jack Kirby's having fun here, because we have the New Gods, we have the Eternals, we have all of these things. The Eternal springs very much from, its original roots in the 1970s. We're still in the Chariots of the Gods phase of everything. Eric von Daniken's book is very big at the time, In Search Of, hosted by Leonard Nimoy. Did they really build things, or were they aliens? I'm not saying it was aliens, but aliens sort of stuff is going on. So the Eternals fits in there. But I think you're absolutely right. This feels like basically what the DC universe, film universe, what Snyder was pinning everything on. This feels like that foundation. And especially when you get to Zack Snyder's Justice League, that's essentially what you're seeing, right? Is something along the lines of the Eternals fighting. You have Darkseid, you have Hercules, you have all of this pantheon, and it takes all of these things, and so it immediately roots Superman and Wonder Woman in this sort of zone that the Eternals is trying to get into. And so strangely enough, this feels derivative of their main competitor. And it's odd because DC movies were setting themselves apart by leaning into this, and Marvel had success by leaning away from it. So that makes this movie all the more puzzling, because why are you suddenly changing direction now? You're basically, what it feels like is they're trying to have every angle. They're saying, well, we'll do that too. And in all honesty, I think it just muddies the brand.
Well, and I think, the way that, and the other reason I think that this doesn't work for the MCU is that the MCU has always set itself up as being heroes among men.
Mm-hmm.
DC, from the beginning, with what it did with Man of Steel, it started about gods among men.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, having a story where you have more godlike beings facing off about other godlike beings, and being basically, of course, and of course, like you said, with Zack Snyder's Justice League, it's the Justice League are basically descendants in some ways, metaphorically, of the gods of Olympus and that kind of thing. So, but the MCU has never done that, right? In fact, if anything, the MCU has been about men against God, or gods, or bad gods, right? In much the same way that the original run of Star Trek, Kirk was going around always killing crummy gods that were false. And in a lot of ways, that's exactly what we've been seeing in the MCU. They're killing false gods, people who have these godlike desires. In fact, the MCU is rife with characters making bad decisions that put themselves basically in the place of gods, which ends up creating big problems. I mean, that's where we get Vision, and you've got Thanos pretending basically to be a god and making a godlike decision, and here with the Eternals, we're adding in the Celestials, which are these godlike beings who now are, apparently creating universes. But to do that, they have to create and then destroy something so they can create again. And it's just like what it really creates is this ultra nihilistic universe to which there's really not a lot of hope.
It's also creating something that, one, let's be honest, let's address the elephant in the room. Kurt Russell in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Yep. Ego should have fallen into this camp. He doesn't. He can't fit here, especially with the mythos that they make. So it's an odd misstep for a series that supposedly is so concerned about keeping its continuity.
Mm-hmm.
But, on top of that is this really, I think that they try so hard to make it, they overcomplicate everything. They make it so, they try so hard to make it complex that they lose sight of the fact that it's not the complexity of Thanos' plan that appealed to everybody. It was the ease with which anybody could understand what he was trying to do. And the fact that first all you know is he's collecting the stones and he's behind the scenes. Then you understand what he wants the stones for. Then you see him use the stones. Then you see the heroes have to take action based on what he's done. That is very clear, effective, straightforward storytelling. I could not tell you what the real mechanics or motivations of anybody in this movie were. There are too many characters. I didn't care about a single one of them. And we couldn't get involved in this because they address it right off. Where were you when Thanos did his thing with the snap? Well, we couldn't get involved because we can't get involved in human history because we have to let populations grow to a certain stage so that celestials inside their planets can be born. Well, by that logic, you should have cared very much about what Thanos was doing because of the fact that he was setting you back by what he chose to do. Wiping out half of the universe goes completely against what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
You just gave me the reason why you should have gotten involved.
Right. Well, and by saying they can't get involved unless deviants are involved, and yes, no, 100%. It's like by their own logic, they should have gotten involved because Ajax would know that this planet has to survive. Otherwise, you're killing a Celestial. And so it's so overcomplicated and makes so little sense that it's so frustrating. And
let me ask you this. Okay, I'll ask you one question that is fraught with peril for me to ask. Am I a reasonably intelligent person? You've known me for a while. Am I a reasonably intelligent person?
Honest answer. That's a good way to put it. Reasonably intelligent. Yeah.
I can tie my own shoes. I manage to drive a car without killing myself.
Yeah, you put a shirt on in the right way. So
most of the time. Sometimes I mess that up. But, like I said, reasonably intelligent.
Yeah, one pant leg at a time.
But both legs in one pant leg at a time. That's, sometimes.
Yeah, that's also somewhat frustrating sometimes.
So why did it have to have a certain number of people for the did the Celestial have to eat everybody when it was born? Like, I seriously had tuned out by that point where they were like, it needs to have this many people. Why? Like, you legitimately solve the whole problem by simply saying, oh, well, we can't get involved unless deviants are involved. And it's being born simply because the Earth is old enough now. It's been gestating long enough. Okay, you just solved a huge story problem right there by simply thinking it through. I'm not Albert Einstein here. Okay? How did I miss some reason why there had to be so many people? Did I miss this?
Yeah, I've watched this twice now, and it almost feels like there's a certain amount of energy that is created by having a certain amount of people at a certain technological level, I guess, which doesn't quite make sense that I guess the Celestial feeds off of and then finally is able to have enough energy to break through, the womb of the Earth. You're absolutely right. It just doesn't make sense. And so I've got another question for you here, because what I don't quite understand either, we're in phase 4, right? And we're doing this show. After this has come out, we're already in phase 5 now. We know they're going towards the multiverse, right? With Kang and the Secret Wars and all that kind of stuff. What does this have anything to do with anything that they're doing? Like, what I don't understand is, why does this movie exist and how does it fit into what they're trying to do in the first place? Like, that's the thing that I've rewatched this movie now, and we're in phase 5, and I still can't understand exactly why we're telling this story in the first place at all. There seems to be no why other than, well, let's throw some spaghetti at the wall and see if it sticks.
Yeah, I got nothing. I can't help you. Maybe so Harry Styles can be in the part 2 or something? I don't know. But
yeah, with the world's worst animated looking sidekick.
Oh my gosh. Oh geez, that Pip animation was just wow. Wow. We're talking about the stinger, obviously. I mean, why would anybody be listening this deep into this show without having seen the movie? So you know what we're talking about.
Well,
but Pip,
and we already know that Marvel VFX has been having problems for years now. I mean, there was just another article that came out in Vulture today about the problems that they had with Ant-Man and Quantumania, and having to take people off of that so they could work on Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, which still also looked like junk. And so it's just like, their VFX has been struggling for a long time. But yeah, it was
mixed results at best.
Yeah.
But there are two things I want to be sure we talk about before we round third or anything like that. 3 things. Okay. And I'm not trying to dominate the floor here, but one, I watched the, quote unquote IMAX enhanced version of this on Disney Plus. It's my first time seeing it. I was angry at how inconsistently and inartfully the switching aspect ratio was used. When I watch a Christopher Nolan film where he uses IMAX, he has the decency to say, this is an IMAX sequence. Enjoy. Now we're back to normal aspect ratio. Now we're back to IMAX. We don't have 3 aspect ratios, nor do we change the aspect ratio between 3 different shots inside of 5 seconds. The hell is that, man? Yeah. Look, I'm sorry. That's the only way I can say it without getting a bleep here is, what the hell was going on with that? don't bother. It's annoying and it's insulting. Sorry.
Well,
that's my take on it.
I completely understand because, seeing it in the movie theater, it was not quite as jarring as that because you're on a much bigger screen but when you're on a television screen, it does become very apparent when you go from your normal letterbox look to a not quite IMAX format, then to the IMAX format, which fills the entire screen, and then it is very strange. And there seems, like you said, to be no consistency in that whatsoever. And I could not figure out why there were 3 different formats in this film, and it's definitely not done well at all. So no, I 100% agree with you in that. Now, I do have to ask you. You mentioned the fact that this is a movie that has 45,000 characters in it, and so I think I'll put it this way. For me, there are 2 characters that I enjoy watching their story in, and I think that they do a pretty decent job of bringing them to life. And they're honestly characters who just don't get enough time, unfortunately, on screen. So Don Lee as Gilgamesh, and then Angelina Jolie as Thena. I thought their story was actually really beautiful. It's a really well done story. The idea that you have this unrequited love of this person who spends his entire existence taking care of somebody that he desperately loves, but will never take advantage of because she can't, right? And it's a beautifully played, not romance, and it's heartbreaking, right? Because these people have lived for thousands upon thousands of years, and it's the only thing in the movie that I truly actually found any connection to, even the second time watching this film. I find what's frustrating is that we focus on all of these other characters, and we're moving from them so quickly, and none of them are really given anything interesting to do. It all feels very, I would say, rote. It feels very blasé. It feels cliche, and it just doesn't. Other than those 2, I feel like it doesn't work. So my question for you is: were there any characters that, when they were on screen, that you enjoyed any of them, or had any relationships that you gravitated towards at all in this film?
No. Gilgamesh and Thena. That was an interesting thread they should have pulled on. But no, what I found absolutely flat out interesting, and I know, Chloe Zhao said that she actually liked what Zack Snyder had done with Superman. And I suppose it's better for her to copy Man of Steel for Icarus than for the Russo brothers to have copied Shrek for the Hulk. So that's a win, I guess.
It's true.
But at the same time, I found it, again, funny that especially Marvel fans were annoying. Not every Marvel fan. I'm a Marvel fan too, guys. At least I was before this movie. But Marvel fans as a whole sort of built online part of their identity, dragging what Snyder did. And then you had this high-profile film where a character is essentially patterned after his Superman. And I found it interesting because, again, it's off-brand. That the whole idea of, well, Zack Snyder's Superman doesn't work in Marvel movies because that's just not the type of character we do. Well, here you go. Here he is. Sort of. Even the way his eye beams work. I'm like, come on. Stop copying here. And even his end, flying into the sun, is unfulfilling. No, I didn't, and as for Arishem, okay, talking about characters, here's a reason why this movie makes me angry in another way. Everybody looks up. Everybody sees Arishem in the sky. Everybody freaks out. Oh my gosh. Wow, look at that. That's a big, imposing image. It's stunning. And the only thing I could think, because I was so done with the movie by this point, was thinking to myself, what a damn shame that this type of shot was not saved for when Galactus shows up in a Fantastic Four movie. Because that's a Galactus shot. That is Galactus showing up to eat your freaking world and everybody looking up and going, oh no, what's about to happen? And instead, it's just for him to show up and be like, I'm mad you did things and I'm going to look at your brain. Bye. What? Why'd you even have that? And so that bothers me too. Sorry to get so animated, but you stole my Galactus from me, man.
Well, and I think, it makes sense because you are somebody who has more familiarity with the Marvel comics. And so them kind of doing it in this way takes away from something, the Fantastic Four we know is one of the building blocks of the Marvel universe in the first place. And then to kind of steal something that would take away from what would make, films in the MCU with the characters from the Fantastic Four frustrating. And and we know, obviously, that those are characters that are going to be coming in the MCU in the first place. And so, because according to, Feige, he hopes that the MCU goes for 80 years. The comics have been around that long. So I guess this show is never going to end. But I got to ask you this, John. A lot was made about the fact that Chloe Zhao was directing this film. She had won for No Land, and she is a high-profile director and has a very specific look. So that means that every scene here needs to take place either at sunrise or sunset,
Yeah.
And what did you think about just the look and feel of this film overall?
Meh. I didn't see anything where I was like, wow, look at that visual sensibility. I honestly, just especially with the way the aspect ratios switched around and the inconsistency of the effects, I didn't get the sense of anything special happening visually. And I'm saying that with all due respect. Obviously, I'm not a director, blah, 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 usual sort of, mea culpas and humility here. But, I look at the first Thor, Kenneth Branagh, I look at that and I'm like, wow, there's visual flair there. I know that Marvel hated his use of Dutch angles and stuff like that, but that's a visual impression in my brain. I don't walk out of this at all with any sort of visual impression of what she was trying to do there. The original Avengers, it looks like a Joss Whedon TV show with a big budget. Okay, that's a visual thing. But no, I honestly thought that the visuals were kind of bland.
I think that the movie has a distinct visual style that's hers, and part of that has to do with the fact of when she shoots. She loves to shoot at sundown or sunrise, and she loves that lighting, kind of that golden hour lighting. It's her thing. And so there are a lot of shots in this movie that are definitely things that she does. I think that, unfortunately, the movie here, she's not serviced well by the script that she's been given, because she would be better served by a much smaller film that's much more character-driven than this kind of overblown, ridiculous, out-of-this-world creation myth thing that she's been handed. And I just don't think it helps. It's not her fault, in all honesty. I don't think that this has anything to do with her, because I can see bits and pieces where I think she, as a director, comes through. I think the rest of it comes down to the fact that everything else is just so oversized. It's like, you went to McDonald's and you supersized everything. That's exactly what this movie feels like. We're going to supersize it, and when we're going to pair it with a director who is somebody who would be more comfortable sitting down with a well-cooked steak and a Merlot that they're swirling around in their glass watching for the legs. You know, like this is not where this director fits. And so yeah. I guess the other thing I wanted to ask you was just about, okay, the action and the effects here. You know, we've talked a lot about, and we talked a little bit about the effects work at, at the end of the film. What did you end up thinking of that here in the movie?
Typical sort of Marvel. Some of the shots looked good. Some of the shots looked rushed, like they didn't give the team enough time or money to do what they were trying to do. And so it wasn't egregiously inconsistent. It wasn't something like some of the other entries that we've gotten where I could see the shortcomings a lot. There were moments in Spider-Man Far From Home where the shortcomings really stood out. There were moments in Thor Ragnarok where the shortcomings were there. Like, I could go through and just be like, yeah, it fell short there. Or like I look at, Leterrier's Incredible Hulk and I'm like, the ending of that, they weren't quite ready for what they were trying to pull off there. It was a little ambitious sort of thing. So there wasn't anything where I thought it was just hideously, like it didn't jump out as bad until Pip at the end.
Yeah. Yep.
And when Pip showed up, I was just floored with how bad that looked.
Mm-hmm.
It just looked terrible.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, effects wise, it's like middling.
I think it's interesting because this is one of the more consistent films, I think, in the effects, especially within Phase 4 so far. We haven't had that many films here, but I would say this is the best looking of all of them and that we've had to this point. But I think you're absolutely right. It's fine. I think the problem becomes more the fact that I don't really care about any of the action that's happening because I don't care about the movie because I'm not caring about the characters and I'm not caring about the story. So however good the effects are don't really matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we've talked about films throughout the MCU here where regardless of what the effects were like, you're so invested in the characters and the story that's happening, that part, it's like, oh yeah, that part wasn't great, but you know what, I'll forgive it because I liked what was happening with the characters. And so I think that's frustrating that you have a movie where it's like, oh, well, that looks pretty good, but I don't really care. And I think that's a really sad place to be.
Speaking of caring, I know Blade has the last line of the movie, technically, with the stinger. But Kit Harington reaching for the blade to become the Black Knight and then hearing Blade from the, say, whatever line was, is such a deep dive that absolutely nobody except people with a really good memory of some really obscure crap in Marvel Comics got what the hell was going on there, except to say that Jon Snow would be back in Eternals too.
Yeah.
That's it. So.
Which I'm really excited to have Jon Snow back. I was a huge fan of him in Game of Thrones. So, the fact that he's going to be in the Marvel movies is awesome. What a crossover.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Maybe it was one of the walkers. Blade is a day walker. He's talking to Jon Snow. Yeah. There we go. There's our tie-in.
I love it.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't really know what else to say about the film. And so I guess that means that it's probably just a good time to rate Eternals. So, John, you were going to, and you are going to rate Eternals. So what is that rating?
0.5 star. Yes, that's a brutal rating. And that's because, and I was saying this to my daughter, I can honestly say that I dislike this movie so much I almost don't want to keep watching Marvel movies. This was almost 3 hours of my life. My time's precious. I know it might not seem that way, but my time's precious. And I have watched Neil Breen movies. I've watched The Room many, many times. Those are bad movies. I've watched Miami Connection. But they're fun to watch. There's a sense of joy. There's a sense of innocence about somebody putting together a movie like Fateful Findings, where you're not quite sure, is it just that they've never watched a movie before? What's happening here? Why is this going on? And you can have a chuckle, and you could sit there and puzzle over it. Or you watch The Room, and you almost feel this human sense of sadness for Tommy Wiseau, because you're like, man, this guy really tried. He just didn't know what he was doing. And you can't be mad at him about it. But you get a chuckle out of it, too, because some of the stuff that's going on is so silly that it's just fun. This is not fun. This is painful. This is bad on every front. It was a waste of my time. Half star.
This is one of those movies that I vowed that I would never watch again when I first saw it. And here I am rewatching it. That shows you how dedicated I am to this podcast, y'all. And it was rated at 1 star. It got half a star taken away because I had to rewatch it. And there was nothing to improve this movie at all. I think part of that, too, was that rewatching the movie, I was struck all over again as I don't understand why Arishem would create beings that go to a planet that can't hear and that are children. Like, just the logic of this makes absolutely no sense. And so, there's just things in this movie that just are there to be there. And that's the worst kind of filmmaking. And
yes,
this is the worst kind of filmmaking, I think. And I want to ask you a question before we get to our ratings real quick. Do you think, now that you've seen a few things in Phase 4, is Marvel ever going to be able to recapture itself again? Or are we always on a downward trend?
I think all they can do is stop the bleeding at this point. I'm still looking forward to Guardians 3 because 1 and 2, I'm like, delightful. And I'm willing to give 3 a shot. Because the first two showed me
No Way Home coming, too. I mean, and at least in this. And next week we talk about Hawkeye. And so there's things in here that could be good. So, but I just...
Movie-wise, no. I can honestly say that... You know what? We'll get to our rankings, and you'll see why I feel like movie-wise they're... Yeah. I'm
going to go with my rankings first on this one because I normally let you go first. But I'm going to go with number 1, The Eternals. No, I'm just kidding. Captain America, Winter Soldier, Iron Man 3, Civil War, Avengers Endgame, The First Avenger, Black Panther, Guardians 2, Ant-Man, Doctor Strange, Shang-Chi, and the Legend of the Ten Rings, The Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man Homecoming, Guardians of the Galaxy, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Avenger, Spider-Man Far From Home, Avengers Infinity War, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Thor The Dark World, Iron Man 2, Thor, Howard the Duck, Black Widow, Age of Ultron, Captain Marvel, WandaVision, Thor Ragnarok. And it will always be at the basement because I do not think anything will ever be this bad. Eternals. John?
Well, we differ slightly on something here, Matt. But not as much as you might think. Because, of course, going back through. All right. Deep breath. Hang on. Don't hyperventilate, everybody. Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Iron Man 3, Ant-Man, Guardians 2, Iron Man, Avengers Endgame, Black Panther, Guardians 1, Doctor Strange, Loki, Captain America Civil War, Captain America the First Avenger, Ant-Man and the Wasp, The Incredible Hulk, Avengers Infinity War, Thor, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Spider-Man Homecoming, Avengers, Howard the Duck, WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Spider-Man Far From Home, Thor the Dark World, Iron Man 2, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers Age of Ultron, Black Widow, Captain Marvel, and Eternals. And I just want to make this note here as Eternals comes in dead last. It was a joke for a very long time, and I was dead serious. It's like, no, I'll never dislike anything more than I dislike Captain Marvel. I at least understood what they were trying to do with Captain Marvel. They might not have done it well, but I got what they were going for. Same with Black Widow. I would watch any of the 4 movies on my list before Eternals, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers Age of Ultron, Black Widow, and Captain Marvel. I would watch any one of those at least 3 times in a row before I would watch Eternals again. I will never, for any conceivable reason, rewatch Eternals. If you propose, hey, why don't we go back and watch things in reverse order? No, I will never watch this movie again. What about if you want to do
Chloe Zhao on House Lights?
Don't care. Nope.
And by the way, I realized that I forgot to add Loki in there, and Loki for me comes between Ant-Man and the Wasp and Avengers. So,
but that's okay because Letterboxd won't let us put in anything like What If either.
Yes, so. I know. What If is frustrating because I can't put What If in there anymore. I don't remember where it was on the list.
You know what? I think everybody should go back and listen to that episode and remind us.
I think that What If was probably between like Shang-Chi and the Incredible Hulk kind of thing. It's up there for me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, for me, What If definitely happens in, because right now, like if I have it broken out, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows. What If is somewhere between, what was it here? It's somewhere between Captain America Civil War and Howard the Duck. It's floating around somewhere in there. Right.
Yeah. And What If might be a little bit lower. I think it's probably more like it's between Guardians of the Galaxy and Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Which is funny that you put it that way because that would actually elevate it in my list.
Yeah. Yeah. So, no, I'm really frustrated that they took What If off there as an ability to be able to put in because it really helped my list. So I might actually just have to go out and write my list and then, anyway. But, we talked about Eternals, and on the next episode, we're going to be on to Hawkeye, which I'm excited to actually rewatch. I love Jeremy Renner as the character and introducing Kate Bishop now. Too, I know people rave about the Matt Fraction comics, and so, which these are kind of based off of, which I've really actually been wanting to read, and I have a copy of, I just haven't gotten a chance to get around to it. But anyway, John, if people wanted to catch up with you, see what else that's going on in Castlevania these days, and how Kesselcoin is doing, where would they find you?
Oh, Kesselcoin is having a banner year. It's the most stable currency. It has lost no value since we last checked in.
Fantastic.
Keep that in mind, kiddos.
I'm glad I've invested heavily.
You know what? And Castlevania appreciates that. And you can send all of your concerns about Kesselcoin. Find me online. It's Kessel Junkie. I'm going to be a little bit quiet during the Lenten season while we're recording this, but I'll never be able to stay away. And you can find me over on the Nerd Party Network, co-hosting 2 shows. One is called House Lights. Matt mentioned it earlier, where we look at the work of directors by different silly categories. And we have a lot of fun with that. And I co-host a show called Aggressive Negotiations, a Star Wars podcast. And I co-host that with you, Matthew Rushing.
And it's a blast. Everybody should be checking out Aggressive Negotiations. If you are a Star Wars fan and you like the Star Wars shows that we do here, Aggressive Negotiations is definitely the place for you. Of course, you can find me all over social media under the name MattRushing02. Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Vero are all the places I'm most active, and I would love to catch up with you there. You can also find me here on the network doing a lot of other shows, most of them Star Trek related. Of course, everything in the 602 Club main feed, but you've got Warp 5 about Star Trek Enterprise, The Orb about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Literary Treks about the books and the comics of Star Trek. You've got Saddle Up about Strange New Worlds, and Star Trek Picard Season 3 is happening now. That means the Artificial Tango is back as Chris and I are diving deep into that series. You can't miss it. And of course, when I wasn't doing aggressive negotiations on the Nerd Party, you can find a completed show called Owl Post. I did that with Drea Kaufman, and we talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. But thank you so much for joining us.
Avengers, but not the Eternals. Avengers. Assemble.